Good morning. Hand today is going to be King 8. We are in early position, under the gun raises, and we fold. Um, Nothing really to say about the fold. I don't expect it. Again, we play pretty tight. This player, I think, is the same darn player. We've got added notes to him. He did ISO, but his VPIP is 42%. 42% raise first in early position, and then it drops off in mid position and picks back up for cutoff and button. This is 42%. I've adjusted it. I took out some of these offsuit connectors to ensure that we have these ace-x hands, the offsuit ace-x hands. So big range. Folds around. Both of the blinds call. We don't have many hands on either of them. So on this guy, 20, 25, 10 is his stats. Really hasn't played much. 5 out of 20 hands. This will be the first hand that he's played from the blinds. I do have a note, and I believe this is the hand. So I think a player like this that seems to be somewhat tight, and that's despite the fact that he has played 2 out of 5 in early position, 1 out of 2 on the button. I mean, with this few hands, this is the small number of hands, he could have easily have just had hands in early position, and that's why he's raised, and he really hasn't had hands in later position. I've been there. I've had hands like that, so yeah, total of five hands. So small blind typically plays tighter, especially against an early position player when everyone else folds. So I think pocket pair here. I'm going to assume queens plus ace king is 3-bet. I'm going to say, some of these Broadway, suited Broadways, and that's about it. I just think a player like this is probably tight, and you might not even have these small pocket pairs. I'm going to leave them in because generally this is a 10 NL game. I think some players will play every pocket pair hoping to hit trips. His next player's also kind of hard. He's playing 48-18. We do see he's played 3 out of 4 hands from the big blind, 2 out of 4 from the small blind. He's called a 2-bet, 1 out of 3 from the small blind, but 3 out of 3 from the big blind. I think this guy's going to also be fairly wide. Suited aces, suited kings, broadways, pocket pairs, and so forth. I'm going to go with queens plus ace king as a 3-bet. And also, we do have a note on this guy, and I think this note is from this hand. So I don't really want to look at it. I did, but we're going to go with these ranges. And quite frankly, I don't think the hands that both of these that were in both of these players' notes are too outrageous. So I don't think it's not like it's a 7-4 suited hand. It's like, well, I have to develop a range that has 7-4. I think it's that I'm okay with the hands that they have. So we see a flop of 9-3-2, 9-3 and 2. Both of them check to the razor, and he bets fairly large. Somewhat of a dry board. I think here, when you look at the range of hands that you have, you're probably not going to be betting a whole lot. I mean, it is fairly dry. He's got a lot of hands that miss. I think on this board, if I was in the blinds, I'd probably plan to check call or even maybe check raise as a bluff. You can't imagine. It just kind of depends on what kind of hands you have. Definitely check call because I can't imagine on this board it's the early position player. And even if it does hit the early position player, it's not going to be a strong hit. So when we look at his range, yeah, top pair plus, I could see, when you see the draws, maybe the open ender, maybe the gut shot's what he's playing. At this point, maybe it's gonna have to be the overcards that he's playing. It's a lot of Broadway hands that completely miss. Probably also these pairs is what he's betting. His C bet stat, 2 out of 2 in position, 1 out of 8 when out of position. I think he's probably just going to be betting all of his pairs and then those draws along with the overcard. So you could see it's about 50-50. I think based on his range, he's probably C betting a little too much. Probably would be worthwhile to check, and then if there's a Broadway card comes out, bet, try to represent that. Because right now, I just, if he got lucky and hit the 9, he hit the 9. But there's so many other cards that would likely, or that could come, that would hit either of those players' ranges. All right, so this guy wasn't in there. So we have called 2-bet from the blinds with ace jack off. That was this guy. So ace jack off was in his range. This wasn't the hand, but I think it's a decent spot. Now let's work through. I do think he probably would have called his pairs, top pair, probably the pocket pair below those hands. We're gonna say open enders is probably what he's gonna call. So he's really not gonna be calling a whole lot at 29%, 30% or so. But he folded. All right, this guy calls. He didn't raise. Kind of a dry flop, so I'm not going to be too surprised that you don't see a raise from like a set or an overpair. So set or overpair, I think is called. I think pocket pair less than the top card calls. Then does he call any draws? I mean, that's 50% of hands already. All right, I think we're just going with that. 6 diamonds comes out. Both players check, so I think this is revealing. I think at that point, I can't imagine he's betting any more with the top pair. He could have all the rest of that. And I don't think the flush draws, I think the flush draw would have been bet here. So I think his hand has just become quite a bit weaker now. And I think that's why I check call. Again, you don't expect him to connect. 7 of hearts comes out. With that 7 of hearts now, I think this guy could bet as a bluff. I think here you're betting as a set over pair. I think your bluffs are going to be with like the weak pair, and maybe the 8s are just a check call. With the 8 block, I mean, you block a lot with the 8, so I think that's kind of like a check call, kind of a induce a bet. And then, yeah, 4s and 5s, you're betting to try to get any of the low pairs to fold, but I'm not even sure if it's worth it. I don't think we have enough bluffs in our range here. So he checks, and this guy checks. I do think he probably needs to go for a little bit of value. If you have a set or an overpair, I think you go for a little bit of value. You'll probably get called by a 1 pair hand, by 8s. Maybe one of these weak pairs that tries to bluff catch, or even some of the aces. At some point, he's going to probably be curious and say, well, does he really have a hand? And especially the pot's 18, you go ahead and bet something like 6. 6 big blinds, maybe even 9 big blinds. He might just call to see what we have, so we can go for a little bit of value. All right, showdown hand. This is 9-5 of hearts. Don't have the 9-5 of hearts here. We kind of kind of assumed he would have bet those top pair hands. But I guess since he checked, he would be like these weaker hands, weaker kickers, maybe queen nine. So maybe bet ace nine, king nine. I think that's my mistake here on the read. Kind of assumed that they would have continued betting the nines, but he does have some weaker hands here. So his range is 9-5. I mean, if he's playing at 9-5, then suited queens as well. That's a I don't know why he played 9-5 under the gun, but he did. So we're gonna take some notes on him, improve our hand reading, and the notes that we have. So RFI 2.5 under the gun with 9 of hearts, 5 of hearts. He is IP 3-way. He bet, I think that was probably 75%. And then check. On a 9 of diamonds, 3 of spades, 2 of hearts, 6 of diamonds, 7 of hearts. Alright, so take this guy and then we will critique. So he called under the gun 2.5 RFI in with jack of spades, jack of diamonds. He is out of position 3-way. Check, call 75%. That's probably maybe 80%. Check. All right, so I don't like this guy's range at all. He's kind of playing backwards, trying to take advantage of the fact that people view early position players as tight. You can do that a couple times in a night, probably. But once you start playing with regulars, they pick up on that, and they're going to realize that you're way too loose under the gun. And then when you're in mid position, they know that basically when you come in, you've got a much stronger range in mid position. And we're building that profile for this player. I don't mind the jacks, but knowing that this guy has such a wide range, I think jacks could easily be a 3-bet pre-flop. We can take a look at small blind versus early position. You could see the gray is a 3-better call. I think against this guy's range, you could do you 3-bet all of those, and then it means your calling range starts to become much wider. Like you start calling maybe with like 8s and 7s, some like 7-8 suited, 9-8 suited, those types of hands, like king 10, queen 10 suited. So we can start to expand, take advantage of the fact that this player is playing loose. Now we wouldn't go crazy because we are out of position, but I do think you attack 3-bet. He did 2.5. You 3-bet. He calls. This is a great hand to c-bet on. He's going to call with that 9-5 on the turn. We've got the opportunity to bet again, and I probably would have bet again with the jack. I think it's going to be tough. I don't necessarily think it's a 3 street of value hand. So it's like one of those hands where if we bet the flop, we bet the turn, and he calls both, are we going to really bet the river again? And if we don't bet the river, are we strong enough to check call? Definitely, I think we can check call the turn. I think this guy's tendencies are such that we could probably check, and he would float. He does it on the flop. He 0 out of 2 on the turn. He hasn't had that opportunity on the river. He has donked on the river, but I mean he might just check behind. We get our 2 streets, but definitely I think we see bet once we 3-bet pre-flop, we are going to lead the flop. It's just then comes to the turn. Are we going to bet the turn and bet the river, or are we going to check call the turn and then maybe check river, check call river, or maybe bet turn and then check with the intention of calling the river. I'm not sure if our hand's strong enough for 3 streets, for 3 bets. And 3 bets would represent strength, but I do think we, on a board like this, we bet probably on the smaller size, and then probably half pot on the turn, and then maybe come back with the smaller size on the river, or go check call. What we don't want to see happen, and I think the worst case scenario will be that we bet flop, and then maybe we bet turn, and then when we check the river, he comes over and shoves all in and puts a decision for our stack. That would be scary because typically you don't see those types of bluffs at the 10 NL game. Sometimes you see it at the 25, or I suspect we see it at the 25 NL, and I know I've encountered it at the 25 NL, but it's just something we have to be aware of. So I think he kind of missed a 3 bet against this player. It could also be a call, like he did, but then, and I don't mind his check call on the flop. I don't mind his check on the turn, but once it goes check on the turn, I think on the river he needs the bet to go for a little bit of value. Pot's 18, he should probably go for 9 here, or 12. Lead larger size. I do think 9-5 is going to call that. I think he's going to call 12. Not sure if he would call a pot size bet or not, but I think at least half pot. I think 12 is probably going to be the threshold. So small blind, I think that was his mistake. This guy, it's just way too wide. I don't mind his flop C bet, but once he checks behind on the turn, it really gives his hand away. And yeah, I screwed up in this case with the top pair hand. I think we did it earlier, maybe it was yesterday or a couple days ago, where he checks, and we basically stripped out all of the weaker kickers' hands, or the top pair hand with the weaker kicker. That's what we should have done here, and I think the threshold's at that queen 9, where sometimes he might bet, sometimes he checks. I think the weaker kickers are justifying him checking. So that would have been you could say a brain fart if I bet with like 8s in this case, thinking, well, I don't think he necessarily has a 9, and then he shows up with a 9. It's like, yeah, it's a weaker kicker. That makes sense. So there's our hand for the day. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We've got a couple more this week, and then I'll be off. I wouldn't be able to do it over the weekend, first part of next week, but we will get right back to it. So hopefully enjoy these. Work through them as I work through them. That's all I could say. You'll improve your game.